Welcome to Happy Money. Today, we're talking about what no one tells you about money, but should. Get ready to get real about the emotions keeping you trapped in debt. Find out the 7 steps you need to take to financial freedom and why a frustration audit is as critical as a financial audit for couples. With us is personal finance expert, best-selling author, and co-host of The Ramsey Show, Jade Warshaw. Jade, I am so excited to have you on Happy Money today. You obviously are so well known for your financial insight. You are a co-host on The Ramsey Show, which gets tens of millions of viewers, which goes to show how much people are very curious to know about money and finance. And then now you have a new book, which we just featured in Women's World magazine, What No One Tells You About Money.
Well, first off, thank you so much, Julia, for having me. It's really an honor. It's cool to be in the magazine. It's even cooler to be on the podcast. So I'm excited to be here.
You weren't always this financial guru expert. You were once a newlywed, very heavily in debt. I think I read $500,000. I'd love to hear a little bit about how you found yourself in that position and then your journey to where you are here today.
You know, my husband and I found ourselves in $460,000 of debt very early on in our marriage. We'd gotten married 1 week after college graduation. And, you know, in that time, you're just kind of oblivious to everything else going on in the world. And honestly, your student loans aren't even due yet. Most of us have a 6-month grace period before they're due. So that first 6 months of marriage was just, bliss. Complete ignorance is bliss. And then when the payments started rolling through, that's really what gave us an indicator that there is a problem here. We've got lots of payments coming in, not enough money to cover them. And that's where the initial conversation started, that this is a problem and we need to look for a solution.
And that number that you were saying, what 465,000?
400, yeah.
That sounds like a big number, but I don't think you're alone. I just saw there was a Reddit thread where a woman was talking about how she hit 45 and she had $900 in her bank account plus debt, nothing saved for retirement. And she said, I don't think I'm alone. And the comments came flowing in. And sure enough, Americans are really struggling with debt, and they're struggling to make ends meet. And it's a very real moment for so many people right now. What would you say some of your biggest challenges? You know, you had that big number and you had all that debt, and it's easy enough to say that you had to cut down on all these expenses. And it's easy enough to say, you just wanted to tackle the debt. But what exactly did you do to go from $500,000 to zero?
Yeah, there were a lot of struggles paying off the debt. And specifically, some of the struggles that we went through, like you said, they're not just monetary. Obviously, you do have to battle with the very tactical things of, now I have to get on a budget. Now I have to decide ahead of time how I'm going to spend every dollar. And now I have to do things like learn information that I didn't know before. I have to learn about investments. I have to learn about what's the best, checking account. I have to learn these things that were never taught. And so there's kind of the practical side of that I think we all know. I have to do math and I have to decide these numbers. But then there's really the internal and the emotional side of it, which honestly, Julia, I think is even more difficult. It's the part that has to keep the promise, right? In the midst of all of that. So I can make a budget all day, but it's not magical. I have to decide, am I going to keep this promise to myself? Am I truly only going to spend, $600 on groceries? Am I going to keep the promise that says I'm no longer going to go shopping and buy shoes and jewelry and whatever the thing is that you like? So there's that emotional side of becoming a person who keeps their word to themselves. And then there's the emotional side of what all of those things represent to us, because money touches every area of our life. It truly does. If you stop and think about it, it touches your career and your relationships and maybe your spirituality and all of these different things. And so money is tied to some interaction that you've had in the past or in the current. And so when somebody like me comes along and says something that seems very simple, like, hey, if you're getting out of debt, you need to cut back on your grocery budget and you're not going to go to as many restaurants. Well, if you grew up in a household that money was tight and groceries were scarce, and maybe you dealt with food insecurity and you were on reduced lunch at school, now suddenly you go, oh, Jay, don't mess with that. Like, don't tell me to do that. That hits home, right? And so there's a lot of emotions behind money. And Sam and I, that's my husband, we dealt with those just as much as anybody else.
That is so interesting. And you talk a lot about that in your book, that it's not just about math. It's also about your own psychology and your emotions and learning a lot about yourself. What are some of the things that you feel like you learned about yourself as you were going through this debt journey?
Going through this debt journey, I learned why I spend the way I spend. I learned kind of what my trigger points on, what we mentioned earlier, why certain things bother me the way that they do. And I also learned that at the end of the day, if you want to get out of debt, if you want to save money, whatever your financial goal is, you are going to have to do a couple of things. Number one, you're going to have to embrace a plan, because the truth is most of us never learned this in school, right? We did not take classes on how to manage our household. Is it good to use debt? Is it bad to use debt? We just kind of were dropped into society and said, good luck.
Bananas.
Right. So it's good to find a plan that is a proven plan that has worked for a lot of people. So that's thing number one. Thing number two is, yes, you're going to have to embrace the things that take longer. So I've been telling people over and over, part of this is just there's an endurance component that you can't get over. Right now, we're in a society that is very quick. We want things now. If I go on Amazon, I get the thing at my doorstep sometimes in the same day. And when it comes to money, we look around and we really want that same instant gratification. And it just doesn't work that way. We do have to embrace a longer timeline. For my husband and I, it took 7.5 years to pay off our debt. Doing those things that we listed, going out to dinner less and spending less at the grocery store and doing side hustles and getting our income up, all of those things. But the hardest part was saying, hey, this is a timeline. This is a journey. This is not going to happen overnight. And for us, it didn't even happen in 2 years. And so that really is the hardest part. You've got to embrace a plan and you've got to embrace the timeline.
That's so interesting. It's so true. I even had a conversation earlier this week with my boyfriend, and we were talking about what we could cut back on. And I found myself, I was in tears. I got emotional, so emotional about it. And there's this lot of like, but I deserve this. I work hard. Like you realize there are so many narratives that you tell yourself when you thinking about money. And it wasn't a moment, partly because I knew I was coming to tape this video, an interview with you. I kind of was like, whoa, I went to like high emotions so quickly, and you do learn a lot about yourself. So that is so interesting and to think about, and to be easy on yourself too, and recognize that this is, like you say, we don't learn this in school. We learn like geometry and algebra and everything else, but somehow finance gets skipped over. I mean, in college, literally there was like on one of the last days of senior year, they had like a college in the rearview window. And it was like, okay, let's talk real quick about 401ks. And it was just a total afterthought. So yeah, we're going in unprepared. And, we don't often realize that it's this like psychological roller coaster. And because it can feel so overwhelming, that's what I find. I'm often, the emotion I feel is overwhelmed. I'm just like, where do I even begin? And what do I do first? Especially, when you're hitting midlife and you're thinking, do I save for college? Do I save for my retirement? Like, I can't even save anything and I owe debt. Like, do I pay down my debts? So you talk a lot about the 7 baby steps to financial freedom. Can you walk me through what those 7 baby steps to financial freedom are?
Absolutely. Yeah, there's 7 steps to financial freedom. They're baby steps. And I'm just going to go ahead and put this disclaimer out there. A lot of times when I say these baby steps, initially they sound, oh yeah, like that's pretty easy. But then when you start to think about them, you go, wait a second, these are not baby. Like these are big steps. And so I just want to acknowledge that off the top. And that's totally fine if you feel that way. So the first step is to get $1,000 saved. Now, you're not doing anything else, because a mistake that many of us make is we try to do too many things at once, to your point. But with this first step, you do it on its own. You get $1,000 saved. Last time I checked, 49% of Americans could not cover $1,000 emergency, meaning they would have to take out some form of debt to cover $1,000 emergency in cash. So to have $1,000, a lot of people might think that's not enough money, but it actually is in comparison to where most Americans sit. So $1,000 saved is number one. Most people can get it in 30 days. The next step, baby step 2, is you're going to take any money that you may have had saved above $1,000, or you're going to take your income in a combination of both, and you're going to pay off all of your consumer debt. using a method that we call the debt snowball method. Consumer debt is basically anything but your mortgage. And so you're going to list out your debts from smallest to largest by balance, not by payment, not by interest rate, but by balance. So it could be an $800 medical bill at the bottom, all the way up to your $45,000 student loan at the top. List them by balance. And then you pay minimum payments on everything just as you were, hopefully. But any extra money that you had above and beyond, that goes at the smallest debt, that $800 medical bill. So the idea is that if I can knock some of these out quickly, I get the dopamine hit, I feel the adrenaline, and I want to keep going. And I've now lessened the list. It's now gone from, 8 debts to now 7 debts. And that's a really great feeling. So that's baby step 2. Baby step 3 is now we're getting into what all of us want to do, which is save money. We want that cushion. We want that feeling of security. So now we're saving 3 to 6 months of expenses. And this is a fully funded emergency fund. So that's baby step 3. Those all you do individually. You do 1, then you do 2, then you do 3. Don't try to do them simultaneously. The next 3 you can do simultaneously. Baby step 4, you start to invest for the future. So this is you putting aside 15% of your gross income. That's the amount before the taxes come out. You do that every single month. You can put it into your 401k, your Roth IRA, but you're stocking away 15%. And simultaneously, you're doing baby step 3B, which is if you want to save up a down payment for a house, you start putting some money over there as well. Then you can also do baby step 5 at the same time. If you have kids, you can start to put some money aside in a 529 or an ESA for their college. You get to decide the amount. It could be $10 a year, or it could be $10,000 a year. It depends on your budget, what you have, totally up to you. And then also you can do baby step 6, which is start to pay down your mortgage. Now, again, this is an amount that's totally up to you. You could choose to double your mortgage every month. You could choose to put $100 extra on your mortgage every 6 months. Totally up to you. The point is to be intentional about the idea that we want to start to chop away at this thing. And then baby step 7 finally is, hey, I've done these things. I've accomplished, kids' college. I've accomplished really paying down my mortgage. And now I'm just free to just live and give like no one else. I can be generous. I can enjoy my life to the fullest extent without worrying about debt or stress or payments.
Okay, that is so helpful. I am writing down like every single one of those bullets and like putting it on a giant poster in my house. Okay, so let's talk like practical situation for a second. For myself, I had paid off my student loans. I paid off all my credit cards. I was saving, I had emergency fund. I was trying to save towards retirement, and then I bought a car. So I tried to pay as much as I could in cash for that car, but the remaining I took a car loan out. So according to the baby steps, if I already have that $1,000 saved, then should I prioritize paying down that car loan? But that's really scary to me because I feel a little bit like I would be more comfortable with, and again, it's that emotion, right? Like, so everything's like a little scary. And, anxiety and all the things. I feel like I would be more comfortable with having a little bit more of a, emergency fund saved before I sort of pivot to paying off the car loan. But would you say, I guess it can kind of depend per person how comfortable you are. And, I live in New York City and an emergency fund might look a little different. But what would you say to that? Would you say next I should just be paying down my car loan?
I love that question. So for anybody who has gotten out of debt and then they've gotten back into debt, first I'll start by telling you the principle of it, and then I'll tell you why, because I think the why is so important. You can hear something like the baby steps and go, okay, I'll just do it. But if you don't understand the why behind the what, it just sounds like advice and you don't really have that personal buy-in. So in the realm of the baby steps, yes, if you went back into debt, technically you go back to baby step 2, which is now let me go back and pay off this consumer debt. I'm going to pause all the other things and keep all that money and throw it towards that debt. The reason that we do it that way is when you have your full income at your disposal, you can go faster, right? It's kind of like if I had a pitcher of water, it would be a lot easier for me to fill up one glass if I just pour the water in that one glass versus if I say, well, now I've got 8 glasses, so I have to pour a little water here, a little bit of water here. It's going to take me forever to fill up those 8 glasses just doing drops and drops and drops. It's the same thing with our money. If I take my income and I'm trying to do a little bit in retirement and a little bit in my emergency fund and a little bit on my debt and a little bit, it just takes forever. But that focused intensity over time, that's how we create momentum. So that's just a little bit of the the psychology over why it works to commit, let's talk about the fears, because that's the emotional part, Julia. So fear is interesting. It kind of tethers to one idea and it forgets all the other ideas that could also be fearful. So if somebody says to me, Jade, I've got this debt, but I'm afraid to pay it off because if I pay it off, that means I'm not putting as much money into my savings. I go, okay, that's interesting. That's an interesting fear. And so then I just present another fear. I go, well, you want to know what I'm afraid of? I'm afraid that if you lose your job, now whatever emergency fund you had, let's say you had $10,000 because you said, you know what, instead of paying this car down, I'm going to use the $10,000. I'm going to put it towards savings. I'm going to build up $10,000. Well, if you lose your job, that $10,000 is there, but now the amount that you're pulling from that every month is far more because you have to not only pull money to, keep the lights on and food on the table, but now you have to keep this car payment going. So now instead of a household spend of maybe $3,000, it's going to be $3,800 because of this car note. That's the part that makes people go, oh, I didn't think about that. So whatever savings that you had, you're going to blow through it. If you have a car payment, student loan payment, HELOC payment, solar panel payments, right? And so, and if you go, you know what, I'm not going to worry about that. I'm just going to keep food and lights on the table. Well, those payments are going to build up with interest. Debt collectors are going to start calling you. So now the stress starts to pile up. So that's why I tell people, pay off the debt. If you pay off the debt, now suddenly it takes far less to run your household, maybe just your rent or your mortgage and those other incidental things, cell phones, utilities, that sort of thing. And if you lose your job, it's a lot easier to say, well, I can cover $3,000 a month. I can get a job at, Panera and cover $3,000 a month. So that's kind of the mindset that I like people to think about is it's okay to have fear. Let's make sure it's the right type of fear. And let's make sure, and I talk about this in the book, let's make sure we're getting clarity around that fear. And it's not just a vague thing so that we can actually answer the questions and solve for what our fear wants.
Got it. And is there a way to build that emergency fund and invest at the same time? Like, can you put into your Roth IRA and take the money out if you needed it?
So that's a very good question. So when it comes to the idea of, do I build my fully funded emergency fund as I invest? I would say no. And here's why. If you do have an emergency, if you lose your job, if you go on disability, if, right? All of these things that could really cause calamity in our financial life. What you don't want to do is two things. You don't want to go into debt, right? You don't want to say, oh man, now I got to go on a credit card to make ends meet, because that just adds insult to injury. And number two, investments are there for a purpose. Investments are there for your future. And in order to invest properly, you have to keep the money locked in for an extended period of time, right? You don't want to unplug the investment. So you have to kind of know in your mind, there's two things here. I have savings for the future and I have savings for the immediate emergency. So we do baby step 3 first, which is the 3 to 6 months for immediate emergencies, so that we don't have to unplug anything in our retirement. So that allows us to do both things well and keep those money in the proper places. Because the other truth is, if I reach over and pull money out of my 401k before retirement age, now I'm going to be hit with a 10% penalty. Now I'm going to, raise my tax bracket because I took out, $12,000. The hits keep coming when we do that. And so understanding why money is where it is and what it's placed there to do is so important. Please, nobody unplug their investments. I beg of you.
Okay, got it. All right, this is so helpful. So you talk a lot about zero-based budgeting. I hear that zero and I'm kind of like, wait, what does that mean? Can you walk people through exactly what that means and just sort of give folks a bit of a plan when it comes to actually budgeting your money every month so that you make sure you don't get into this debt position?
Yeah, sure. So let's talk about zero-based budgeting. I know the first time I heard it, Julia, I was like, what does this mean? Does this mean I have $0 in my account? I don't like the sound of it. So zero-based budgeting is not that. What it is the idea that we plan for every penny of how our income is going to be spent down to zero. So we're giving every cent a plan. And so, for instance, if you make $4,500 a month, we're deciding what's going to be done with every cent of that money. Everything from groceries to grandma's birthday is going to be allotted for it. Even, and let's say you go through everything, you're like, all right, I planned for everything and there's still $300 left. Now you can say, okay, well, with that $300 left, I'm going to put $150 to my smallest debt in extra payment, right? And then the other $150 I'm going to keep in my account as a cushion, just in case Amazon Prime comes out. I totally forgot about it. I don't want it to overdraw me. And so every dollar is accounted for down to a cushion that is just keeping your account nice and cushy so that, you don't go into the red. So that's what it means to do a zero-based budget.
Okay. And are there tools for this? I mean, now we live in the time of ChatGPT and AI and everything. There must be easier ways to do this than there might have been. Because I hear this and I'm like, oh, shoot, Excel doc.
Yeah. Well, budgets are easier than ever. I know when I was going through with my husband, there were no digital budgets yet. It was pen and paper, and you had the ledger that was in your checkbook, the back of the checkbook. It's like, oh my gosh, I have to fit all these numbers in that little triangle, and then or that little rectangle, and then I have to do the math and don't mess it up, right? But now, yeah, there are digital budgets. My favorite, Julie, is called Every Dollar. I love it. I've been using it since 2016. It is on my phone. I log in. I see the same dashboard that my husband sees if he logs on. You can do it on your phone. You can do it on your desktop. And it's connected to your bank. So whenever you spend, like if I spend at the grocery store, it immediately goes into Every Dollar and I can just log the transaction. So if I plan to spend $800 on groceries and I've just gone to the grocery store for $120, I can log it over and it's going to go down and I'm going to say, oh, now I only have, what did I say, $680 to spend. Perfect. So you're always able to stay on top of your spending. And so that really makes it easier than ever. And it also, obviously, yeah, you can plan for every single dollar and do that zero-based budget that we talked about. So that's my favorite tool.
So going back to that sort of emotion of money, I know that I feel like I'm two people. I can be two people. There are two halves of me. There's me that's like every morning I look at all my financial apps and I look at my bank accounts and I pay off my credit card, and I'm on it. And then there's the part of me, like, especially over the holidays where, you're like, YOLO, like, I deserve this. I'm going out with friends, like, get drinks for everybody. What are some of the red flags to look out for in yourself? You talk a little bit about like smoke signals or just things that you might be doing that, could make you sort of step back and say, oh, hold up. I think I need to get back in check.
Yeah. So a lot of us experience these smoke signals in our finances. It's just an indicator that there's a fire somewhere and you might not see the full blown fire yet, but you have these little clues that indicate things aren't as safe as you think that they are. And another way to look at it is when people call into the Ramsey Show, they're usually fixated on, they're basically majoring in the minors. They're fixated on this one thing like, oh my gosh, we're always overdrawing. My wife is always overdrawing the account. And in their mind, it's their wife's problem. My wife, or my husband. And I'm thinking, no, this is a symptom of a larger problem. Or somebody says, me and my husband are always arguing about the finances. Again, they're thinking it's a marriage problem. I'm like, oh, there's a bigger problem here. So these signals are an indicator of a bigger issue. And they can be really small. It can be, and I list probably over 20 or 30 in the book, but it could be something as small as whenever my husband brings up money, my heart starts beating fast, or I just try to change the subject. It could be something like my account is always overdrawn. It could be something like whenever my phone rings, I put it on silent because I just know it's going to be somebody calling about something I owe them. It could be something more emotional, like I have trouble sleeping at night. Before I go to bed at night, I'm just circulating through everything that I owe. And I'm just always feel like I'm trying to make a plan and I can just feel that anxiety weighing on my chest, right? All of these different things that we feel. It could be, oh gosh, every time my mother-in-law comes over, she makes a comment about the fact that we're still driving these older vehicles, right? All of those things that kind of trigger you or they kind of make you feel like, oh, I'm embarrassed about this or I have anxiety about this. Whenever I go, and this was one that I personally had, if I went to dinner with friends, I always would make my order and then I would feel stressed out and I would run to the ladies' room and I would just double check my bank account just to make sure the money was there. Now in retrospect, I know, hey, if you're wondering if the $18.99 is there for your salad, you don't need to be going out to dinner because you only have $24 in your account, Jade. Like that, those are the sorts of things that I talk about in the book. And they're all different smoke signals that just show you're in an unsafe place with your money.
And then, so speaking a little bit about relationships and couples, you talk a lot about the kind of emotions that often trap couples. Now, you and your husband went through this journey together. I'm sure you had ups and downs. I'm sure you weren't always on the same page. What are some of the common tensions that you see couples face, and what are your kind of recommendations for overcoming them?
Yeah, couples, especially, they're up against so much with their money because it's not just one individual anymore. It's the two of them together. So from the beginning, the first kind of conflict that I see is, how do we want to manage our money? Do we want to do this thing together? Do we want to do this thing separate? Or are we doing a deal where there's kind of a joint account and we're putting money in from our separate places? Or how are we going to do this? So that's the first kind of impasse, is what do we want to do? Now, Sam and I were lucky. And I do say lucky because it just happened naturally for us that we wanted to combine our money completely together. Both of our paychecks go in the same account. We do everything together. There really is no individuality there on the money. And that's the way that I recommend. But the truth is, everybody doesn't do it that way. Fine. Just make sure you're on the same page with whatever it is that you choose to do. So there's that part. Then for those folks who decide, hey, I think I do want to combine money with my spouse. Now there's the thing. Okay, we're going to combine money, but now what about our philosophy? Like, what's our philosophy on money? So now we're talking about how do you feel money should operate in our lives? And that could look like, hey, how do you feel about debt? And one spouse could say, oh, debt is a tool. There's good debt. There's bad debt. Where another spouse could say, oh, my gosh, I'm completely debt averse. I don't like any debt. I want to pay cash for everything. Well, all of a sudden now we're at an impasse. And so those are the things that couples have to work through. Like I said, for Sam and I don't know, Julia, I think we just got lucky that we were young. I say it all the time. We might have just been young and dumb and we just landed on the same page. But I'm grateful for that, because I look back and I go, you know what, that was the best place for us to land. And so I just encourage folks who are in that spot. It's not a light switch. A lot of times people think it should just be this one conversation that we have, and then we'll shake on it and we'll do this thing forever. And I say no. I work with couples all the time. I've seen it in my own life with family members. These conversations take time. There's a lot of trust that has to be built around money, because again, it's tied to every area of our life. So if you're in a situation with a spouse, and maybe your spouse is amazing, but you grew up in a household where money was lorded over, or, there was an imbalance of power, or maybe you had a boyfriend that left you high and dry, or this is your second marriage and you're divorced and you felt like, your spouse kind of cut you out. All of those things, they affect us. And so it's worth working through those. I always say certain things are deeper and they do require the help of a counselor or somebody that you can sit down and have that mediation. But if you can, really do seek to have those conversations early and often. And it should be from the point of view of intimacy. Hey, I just like to feel closer to you. I feel like the way we're managing money is kind of putting a block between us. And I really want to know you better. What do you think about debt? Like, what do you think about our future? What are your plans? And have it as a conversation, not as you need to do this, you need to do that, you haven't, right? Nobody wants to feel accused. And so having it as a conversation and approaching it from a place of love, I think, is very, very important.
Right. You're a team. And I think they even have couples therapists that specialize in finance. So it's a really big and important topic. Okay. So one of the last things I wanted to talk about was this idea of a frustration audit. You talk about a frustration audit in your book. What is that? And what are you auditing in terms of, I know there are so many frustrations with money, but like, what should you be on the lookout for?
Yeah. Frustration with money is so real. It's just this feeling that I'm doing all this effort and I'm not getting the reward that I thought I would get. We've all done it where maybe we're thinking, I want to lose a few pounds. And so we embrace this diet, like you do keto, or you do, like, I don't know, plant-based, you do whatever it is, and you step on the scale after like weeks of just like depriving yourself. And not only have you not lost weight, but you've gained a pound. And you're like, why, God, why? You're so mad. That is the worst. And it happens with money. I remember Sam and I, probably 2.5 years into our journey, we had done so much to pay off this debt. I mean, we had sacrificed in major ways. At one point, we moved out of our apartment into a condo with roommates so that we could save on half of the rent. I mean, we had sold cars, we sold our furniture and slept on an air mattress, all these things we'd sacrificed. And yet and still, there were times where there were still debt collectors calling me and I still owed, on my credit cards. And it just felt like, why is this still such a struggle? And so I remember kind of having this I've had it moment of, I don't know if I can continue because I don't feel like what I call it in the book is I'm doing all this toiling with no traction, and it's not cool. And so what I found is a lot of times we have to go back to the drawing board and say, okay, what was it that I said I was supposed to do? What was the plan I said? And am I actually doing the plan? So for Sam and I realized I'm frustrated for two reasons. Number one, I'm still overdrawn all the time. Number two, credit card companies are calling me all the time. This cannot keep happening. And number three, it's just there's no cushion. Like if something comes out of our account that we didn't plan for, it's like all hell is breaking loose. This cannot keep happening. So we went back to the drawing board and said, okay, the plan we're following is these 7 baby steps. Let's go back and look at what does it say. And so we found out that there were a couple of things that just over time we started doing differently. I don't know what got us off track, but we'd gotten off track. We were no longer keeping that cushion in our account that I told you about earlier. Well, yeah, that's detrimental. That's going to cause you problems because, like I said, if Amazon comes out or, one of these mini subscriptions comes out that you forgot about, yeah, it's going to do you in. You're going to be in the red. Fix it. Okay, now I see where the problem is. I can actually fix it. I realized that, you're supposed to have the $1,000 saved. And at some point I had decided, oh, we don't need that 1,000. Let's just put it towards the debt. And, you kind of just, before you know it, you've drifted away. And that's just human nature. And so the frustration audit helps you kind of recalibrate, get back on track, see exactly where the problem is and see exactly where to fix it. And usually it's just kind of this natural drift that's taken place. Same thing, like I said, with going back to the first analogy. You said that you weren't going to, eat any sugar, but you found like these little snacks that are in the 100-calorie pack and you thought, well, I'll just do that. And, you're wondering why it's not working. So there's usually something that's at play that we thought wasn't a big deal, but actually turns out to be a big deal. The devil's in the details.
Jade, you have given us so many great points to take away and things to think about. I'm already thinking I need to go apologize to my boyfriend for giving him grief when he brought up something that we should be cutting back on because I got so emotional in him. There's so many great things here. What would you say was your biggest takeaway from your book, What No One Tells You About Money? And what is the one thing you want people to learn from our conversation here today?
The biggest takeaway that anybody can get from What No One Tells You About Money is the idea that money is 3 parts. It is not just the 2 parts that we think of. It's not just the money. We all know that. It's not just the behavior. Oh, I know I have to get on a budget. I have to stop spending. We know that. It's emotional. If you can remember, okay, my emotions are playing a major role in this, you can start to identify it when it happens. Just like you did. You think back on a conversation, you go, oh, that was not about that. It was about me. It was about what I was feeling in the moment. If you can realize that, recognition and realizing there's a problem is half the battle. Now you can go, okay, I understand. I was just scared, or I understand. I felt extremely guilty when they brought that up. I get it. And you can start to work through it. And the book will help you do that. But the biggest piece of it after realizing the emotions is just going, okay, I'm going to have to embrace some endurance here. I'm going to have to do something that's a little uncomfortable, that's not necessarily fun for a short period of time to really get what it is that I want. And I tell people all the time, it's a short-term sacrifice for a long-term gain. If you're trying to save up a down payment for a house, it's not going to happen overnight. That's okay. It doesn't mean there's something wrong. It just means that there's a timeline here, and that's totally normal. And so just embracing the journey, embracing the timeline, and also knowing that money is emotional.
And can you make it fun at all? I mean, it sounds like it could potentially. Yeah. What are your tips for making it just a little bit less daunting?
Yes, you have to have milestones and rewards. So important. I talk about this in the book. You have to say, okay, whatever the goal is, let's pretend the goal is to pay off. I have $10,000 in credit card debt. I want to pay it off. Then you can set ahead of time. And ahead of time is key. Every time I pay off $2,000, I'm going to do X, Y, Z to celebrate. Now, the point is the celebration should be something that's going to give you just the boost you need need while not taking you off track. The example I give in the book is when I was running a marathon, you need to stay motivated because it's not easy. And so in order to make it fun, I said on the days that I have to do the long run, when I get back from my run, I get to have my favorite meal, which is margaritas and nachos. Now, the key is I would have one plate of nachos and one margarita, not go on a binge of like margaritas and nachos all week, because that would just destroy me. So it's the same thing with your money rewards. Do just enough that it's like, yes, I feel good, but not enough that it's going to like take you off course completely.
I love that. Jade, thank you so much for coming on Happy Money. It's been such a pleasure to have you, and you've given us so much food for thought. Where can people find What No One Tells You About Money?
Yeah, you can find it anywhere books are sold, especially online, but you can find it in stores at Barnes & Noble, BJ's, or you can pick it up at RamseySolutions.com, Amazon. Like I said, it's anywhere. And if you just want to chat or hang out, I'm on social media. I spend most of my time on Instagram.
Fabulous. And what's your handle on Instagram?
Yep, at Jade Warshaw.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Jade.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for having me on. It was so fun.
And thank you for joining us on Happy Money. If you found today's episode helpful, like, subscribe, and share it with a friend. They can watch on YouTube or listen on Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, or Spotify.